on the NewsChannel 5 network. This is OpenLine.
Hello everyone, welcome to OpenLine. Glad you're with us tonight. It is Wednesday, June 10th, and we are talking with someone who has been in the news a lot lately. We are talking with activist Justin Jones. This is his first interview since charges were abruptly dropped. They were filed and then dropped against him for what happened during protests. That happened last week. So we're going to be talking with him, and for the first time in a long time, he is actually here in our studio. This is not a Zoom interview. Now, he's socially distancing. He's on the other side of the studio, but I want to welcome Justin Jones. Justin, thank you for being here.
Thank you for having me.
All right, so you've been in the news a lot. Last year with Glenn Cassida, we can talk about that a little bit later. Last week, you asked the National Guard to drop their shields. That got a lot of coverage, and they did. You've been front and center in these protests, and I want to talk about all of that, but I want to start big picture since we have the time. Every time you are mentioned in the news, it is well-known activist. You were introduced in newspaper articles and in our coverage as an activist. How do you define that? What is an activist?
Yeah, well, thank you again for having me, Ben. I think an activist is someone who is, in fact, a citizen. I think we have to merge the definition of citizen and activist. An activist is someone who cares, someone who wants to seek change, and also to create tension necessary for that change. And so I know the news refers to me as an activist, but I'm also a student, a minister, someone's son. You know, I'm a brother, and so I'm someone who believes that we cannot allow the politics of hurt to operate in the comfort of silence, and that's what protesting is. It's not just holding signs. Protesting is holding people accountable. That's really what it is, and so that's what I believe activism, organizing work is in our community right now, and something that I've been committed to for the past 7 years at the Tennessee legislature. You
have been up the legislature a lot, and when you say student, do you mean you're at Vanderbilt Divinity, right? Are you a pastor or studying to be a pastor? And how old are you? Kind of take us through all that.
Yeah, I'm 24 years old, graduate of Fisk University here in Nashville. Also currently taking a pause from my studies at Vanderbilt Divinity School. I finished a year and a half. I was intending to be ordained in the United Methodist Church. I'm someone who sees a big connection between faith and justice work. And so I know Vanderbilt Divinity School is a school that has a legacy of people like James Lawson, has a legacy of people who see a prophetic role. And I think that's what activism is. It's going to the power structures and saying, this is what is affecting the least of these. This is what is affecting those who are most vulnerable and marginalized in our community. And so when I think of activism, that's what I see, and I see the sort of intersection of my faith. I'm a member now of Watson Grove Missionary Baptist Church, and just someone who's hoping to continue that trajectory.
How do you pay the bills? How do you make a living? And at what moment did you decide, okay, I'm going to take this to the next level and be this activist?
Yeah, I definitely don't make a living as an activist. If you see my shoes, I have on these old worn out shoes because I'm trying to pay my bills right now. But I'm someone who has had part-time jobs, taken out loans like other people, and I had community support. But definitely am not a career activist. I don't think that's something that anybody strives to be, and it's not something that I've been. So I pay the bills like most other people. Trying to work where I can and trying to spend how I can and budget. So,
was there a point? Was there an event that made you decide, okay, I'm going to put Divinity on hold or whatever, and really focus on this activist work?
I think we're in very high stakes time right now with the presidential election. I formerly was running for Congress just as a way to kind of uplift the issues we've been fighting for, seeing that those in power were not listening to us. And so I put my studies on hold just because it was so hard to sit in a classroom and to sit in this insulated institution of Vanderbilt University that seems so separate from what's going on every day on the streets and in our communities. And so I did put that on hold. I do think, I'm grateful for the opportunity to be able to study. That's what my family, says, like, Justin, we sent you to go to school, and I believe that I want to follow, finish that up eventually. But right now, with all that's happening, we're in a Kairos moment where so much is coming to the surface. We have a once-in-a-lifetime type of election where we have a white supremacist, I would say, who's trying to be president again, and we see what's happening in the streets of our community. And so, again, I put my studies on hold because it's so hard to just sit in a classroom and not put into praxis what you're learning. And so that's where I am now.
When you look at these protests, Do you think this is a moment where there can be real change? How concerned are you these protests will end and there will not be real change?
I think we're in a sacred moment. One of the times I first started protesting when I graduated in 2013 when Trayvon Martin was killed. I'm originally from Oakland, California, the Bay Area, and that was a sparking moment in my life. I was 17, Trayvon was 17, and we've continued to see, you know, these sparks in the protests. You saw what happened in Ferguson, you saw what happened at Standing Rock. I went, with delegations to both of those places. We've seen movements like Occupy, but I think something that's different now is that we're seeing sustained movement, and we're seeing people who are not traditionally the faces of leadership taking leadership roles. And so I would say that this is not a leaderless movement, but it's a leaderful movement. And all around you see young people. Here in Nashville, you had teenage girls organizing thousands in the streets. You saw on that Monday, we had young people from Vanderbilt Divinity School and Fisk coming together, organizing that protest against the National Guard. You see elders and young people coming together saying that it is our time now and that this is not a moment, but it's a movement. And so I'm hopeful. I'm hopeful, but I'm also cautiously optimistic about what's happening because we know we're already seeing the power structures trying to co-opt the movement. You saw Mayor John Cooper this week say, oh, we'll finally do body cameras, something that took 3 years to get. And to that I would say, that's too little, too late. And so I think now's the time to push as hard as we can to say we will not settle for crumbs. We will not settle for piecemeal policy, but we need radical systemic change and what Dr. King called a revolution of values. That's what's happening in America right now. And until we embrace that change and say that these things are not radical, but these are the things that the majority of people in Nashville are asking. These are the things that the majority of people in America are asking, and that the face of America, the heart of America is changing.
When you say we have to push, what is your philosophy when it comes to protesting? Certainly we're in an age where you could follow somebody with a camera and make them uncomfortable, expose them, with what they're saying, how they're acting. And you've done a little bit of that. What is your philosophy? How far do you feel like things need to be pushed? And is part of what you're doing designed to make people uncomfortable? Or what would you say?
I would say we must relentlessly attack systems, but not people. And so we're going against the system of white supremacy, going up against a system of police brutality, going up against this sort of power structure in our city that has for so long refused to hear the demands of people. And I do believe that our goal is to create tension. If you have a protest that is not creating tension, that's not making people uncomfortable, it's a parade. And we don't parades are not what caused change. Like if you look at the lunch counters downtown, that was tension when those young students in the 1960s sat down and said, we refuse to be treated like second-class citizens. When you look at the freedom rides, that was tension. And so we need creative tension that make people uncomfortable, that kind of get that fire going, because there's two ways that change happens. Either people see the light or they feel the fire. And for so long, the people in power have not seen the light, so it's time that they felt the fire because people are hurting. And so that's what we're seeing now.
So last Thursday, it was announced that there were arrest warrants against you. They were felony arrest warrants for rioting. There were pictures of you and another activist standing on top of a damaged police car. The police department sent out a media release saying that you had been arrested, the arrest warrants were taken out against you and another activist. When you saw that release, what did you think?
So I found out on Twitter, which was the most ridiculous thing. I was scrolling through Twitter, it said Justin Jones, a reporter put that there were warrants for my arrest, and I had no idea what happened. One correction I'll just make is that the police car was not damaged when we were on top of it. We got on top of it when it was totally okay, when we were trying to explain to people, this is the next steps of the march. It was the only platform available. There's officers who even saw us. My face was uncovered because we were not doing anything that we were ashamed of. And then so when I heard that they put warrants out for my arrest for felony rioting, I thought it was ridiculous, and I'm grateful for DA Glenn Funk for doing further research and asking for what is the actual evidence of what happened. But one thing I want to lift up is that that those charges were dismissed against me, and I'm grateful. For so long, that is the reflection of a system in which the MMPD and other law enforcement agencies, their word is fact, when in fact, if I didn't have a lawyer, if I did not have people who are willing to shine light on that, I would end up in jail. And so we have to ask MMPD, why did they file warrants for the arrest of people who clearly in the video had nothing to do with damaging that police car, had nothing to do with any type of physical violence? Why was that a priority? Was it intimidation? Was it retribution? I don't know, but we still have those questions, and I have those questions for Chief Anderson.
You said the allegations were politically motivated and false. And yeah, so we saw a video there. I guess before I get into the politically motivated, why again were you on the police car?
We're on the police car to make an announcement. We had no bullhorn. We had no way to amplify our voices, so that was the only platform in front of the central precinct where everyone was gathered. And so we were talking to people about continuing the march, to continue walking, because we had congregated outside there, and it was hard to communicate with everyone in the crowd. And there's other clergy there who saw what we were doing, who came out immediately and said, you know, I was with them, and they were not rioting, they were not engaged in physical violence. You had other members who were in the crowd there saying, you know, I saw everything. And so you had thousands of witnesses, and so it's the most ridiculous thing for MMPD to make this false claim when literally we're surrounded by people, and it's on camera what we were doing. So
the way this worked, apparently, a detective with the police department took the warrants. He saw that video. He took warrants to a judicial commissioner, and he approved the warrants. Then the district attorney's office was notified. This is according to an article. And Glenn Funk said there was a subsequent investigation by the district attorney's office and the police department, and they indicate there's no proof of vandalism. Therefore, the warrants against the individuals were recalled. So they were abruptly dropped. Yeah. So that's kind of an astounding reversal. What do you think about that whole reversal?
Ida B. Wells said the only way to right wrongs is to shine the light of truth on them. I'm grateful that the truth came out this time. It's not the first time I've had charges against me, as you know, Ben, that were eventually removed because of false evidence. This has happened at the Marsha Blackburn rally. This has happened, other times. And so it's something that was not, I'm sad to say, but it was not shocking. I do believe that they were politically motivated. We've been calling out the police department. We spoke at the rally and called out Chief Anderson and other members of the MMPD for the violence that they engaged in, even at that same rally where they sought to arrest me, where they brought out horses and tear gas people around the central precinct without warning, potentially injuring people. And so we've been calling this out since then. At that rally on Saturday, the first rally that we had here in Nashville, calling out Mayor Cooper to hold them accountable. And so we've been speaking out against the police department and have had numerous run-ins with the police department. And so that's why I do believe they're politically motivated. It was something that took me a while to just digest, to have warrants for your arrest, and then 3 hours later to make preparations. I had someone come and pick up my dog. I had people getting ready to go turn myself into the police department so they didn't have to send anybody to arrest me, because again, I had nothing to hide. Had all these preparations made, had been on the phone for hours with different lawyers coming up with what is my response to this, and then grateful to have the charges dismissed and not have to go through that whole process of booking and then potentially staying in jail and paying bond, which are again being set at exorbitant prices and rates. So.
And these were felony warrants, so this wasn't a small thing. Now, the district attorney, Glenn Funk, said he believed the detective seeking the warrant was acting in good faith. I guess you don't feel that way.
I don't. Again, there's video. You can look at the video. You can see we had nothing to do with damaging the vehicle at all. And so I don't understand. And also, I just think it's outrageous that, again, they try and create this image where on that Monday we had got the National Guard to lower their weapons and had organized this peaceful protest, and then on Thursday they try and create this image of you as someone who is instigating physical violence against people or property, and so it's again these caricatures. That's what they do to people who are activists in this community. Is they create these images of you as extremists. I got so much hate mail after that. I got threats after that. People trying to portray you as a certain way. Again, not seeing you as a human being, but trying to create this image of you as someone who's paid to be an instigator. And it's something that has a history in our country where you portray people in a certain light and try and demonize them and vilify them. And I think that's part of what the narrative was trying to do.
So that's interesting. So since that has happened, you've had, I guess you said threats or hate mail, or what sort of reaction has there? Now, there's certainly been some council members who are very supportive of you, and we'll talk about that in a moment. But what has been some other fallout from them taking out those warrants and then taking them back?
Yeah, I don't want to give too much attention to the people, but of course this work comes with people writing crazy letters to you, sending you crazy messages. We have a right-wing publication. I'm not going to give them even name them because they're not worth anything to name, but who published my address once, and so my address was publicized. And so these things happen. You have lawmakers attacking you. because we've protested them before, and then seeking joy in this, trying to say, oh yeah, look at Justin is a violent felon, and this, they've always created this image since the Cassidus situation of someone trying to say that I'm violent. And again, what is violent is their system. What is violent is police brutality. What is violent is the systemic policies that are happening that we're protesting. That's what we need to shift the conversation to. And again, when we give these people credence, when we try and validate what they're saying, we allow them to shift the narrative from what truly matters. And what truly matters is the reason why we were protesting in the first place.
So after this whole incident, a couple of council members, I'll quote Freddie O'Connell, said the department had reached a point of absurdity. And then we have Dave Rosenberg, a council member, saying the department's behavior reeks of vengeance. They both called on the police chief to resign. Now, Don Aaron, spokesperson for the police department, said the police chief was not involved in a decision to have warrants issued against you. He's not like they're filling out warrants against you. But what do you think about the police chief and what these council members are saying?
I would say leadership starts at the top, and that Chief Anderson, if he does not know what's happening in his department, that's either incompetence or something else. And so I hope that Chief Anderson has a better grip of what's going on in his department, particularly in regards to protests against police brutality, because this whole protest is about the police department. And so you think that they would be a little bit more careful and thoughtful about their actions, particularly in this time when they're under such a spotlight in our community. And so again, this is bigger than me. I want to just lift that up too, is that again, I was lucky. Those warrants were thrown out. I'm grateful to the DA's office for saying we want further evidence. We want to actually see the evidence and actually examine this further. I think that the detectives should do that, and that should happen before they file warrants against people. Because how many times has this happened where you had detectives do this very minimal investigation and then people end up in jail? If that happened in my case, which had such visibility, how many other cases has that happened? And I asked that to Chief Anderson. I asked that to the mayor's office, who also has a role in holding the police department accountable.
And there was another remarkable moment last week where there was one of these rallies, protests, and the National Guard was there, and they were holding up their shields. And several people went up and spoke. You went up and spoke, and you asked them to put down their shields, and they did it. I guess take us to that moment. What was it like? Did you expect them to do that? And I guess tell us specifically, what did you say, and did you expect them to do that, or what about that?
Yeah. So we began rallying in Legislative Plaza below the steps of the Capitol, and then at a certain point, myself and some of the other organizers said, let's walk to the Capitol. Let's go past the caution tape that said do not cross, and let's go face to face with the National Guard and the troopers, because again, we come in peace, we come in nonviolence, but we come in justice and with righteous indignation of what's happening. And so we went up the stairs singing This Little Light of Mine, lined up in front of the guards who were on guard, had their shields, had their billy clubs at the ready. And at some point, you just saw, I think it's important, I saw these National Guards, they were my age. A lot of these National Guards people are people who are probably college students doing this part-time, did not want to be there, but again, Governor Billy made a decision to force these young men and women to be on the front lines. I have no idea why. And so we saw their humanity, and one thing Diane Nash taught me, she's one of my mentors, is that this movement is about emphasizing humanity, and it's about trying to redeem even those who think that they're your oppressor. And so these National Guards people, at a certain point I said, I believe in redemption, and that, as that spiritual says, I'm gonna lay down my sword and shield down by the riverside and study war no more. And so we began singing that, and I said that, would you be willing to lay down your sword and shield? And was not expecting it. And you saw initially some start doing it one by one, and then somebody must have commanded them, and they all laid their shields down. And it was a moment of the Spirit that still resonates to me. I mean, when that rally was over, I literally, when everyone had left, I got down and prayed, because I saw the Spirit move in a mighty way that day. And again, it was powerful to see. I'm grateful it was the National Guard in the front lines, because behind a lot of people didn't notice, but the troopers were still there, the state troopers still holding their billy clubs, still had them up. And I hope that eventually one day this movement of the Spirit, this movement of conscience will also extend to them as well. But I want to thank the young men and women in the National Guard. I hope that they don't have to be deployed against their brothers and sisters, their neighbors ever again, because you don't need to call the military out at a peaceful protest. That's the first thing we said when we were marching up, is why are you in riot gear? I don't see a riot here. why are you in riot gear? I don't see a riot here. We were coming with clergy in their stoles. We had on robes. I had one pastor tell me he felt like a Levite going to battle. He had on his full clergy attire. And we were singing spirituals, praying and trying to again, lift up humanity, lift up the fact that we don't need a militarized police force in our community to keep peace, but we need justice.
We don't have video right here, unfortunately, but you can find video online if you're so inclined to go look. It's a remarkable moment. And I want to just ask one more thing before we go to break, and we're kind of going long here. But do you feel like it was one person who put it down, or was there an order? Or do you think one guy just up there was like, I'm going to put this down, or there was an order from the commander? How do you think that happened? I
don't know. It's Pentecost. I might say there was an order, but it was an order from up on high somewhere. But I think that there was an order that people had to examine their own conscience. That's what we're asking people to do, is to say that you may have orders from the governor, orders from a commander, but what is your conscience telling you? Because I did see people start putting it down one by one. I think eventually someone higher up, a lieutenant, I don't know what the ranks are, they all start putting it down all together, and you heard this kind of rumble of shields falling down. And so I think that was a powerful moment. And I hope
it was a moment we all needed to see.
Mm-hmm.
And you said earlier you didn't know why they were here. I'm sure there are people who would say, well, they were here because there was an earlier protest where there was bad damage. I mean, the courthouse was partially set on fire. Many businesses were damaged. That's why they were here. That certainly didn't happen in that protest at that time, but that's why they were here. What do you say to that?
I say that does not bring peace. I say that creates anxiety and tension. That was the first time the National Guard was deployed around the Capitol since 1968. The last time the National Guard formed a barricade around the Capitol was when Dr. King was assassinated, and there was people outraged in the streets. And so I don't think that brings peace. Even regardless of what happened days before, that only escalates tension and anxiety and fear. And so that's the part of our protest too, was to de-escalate the situation, to say that we cannot have peace when you have the military in our community. We cannot confuse desolation with peace, you know. And so again, we wanted to lift up that we do believe in the power of nonviolence, of this sort of righteous movement of change that is also pressuring people, and that extends to our Capitol, where we had literally, if you go up there, it looked like a scene from Selma, where you had the troopers, you know, with their billy clubs at the ready, holding them like this. We had no idea what was going to happen when we walked up those stairs, but we put trust that something higher was at work, and that we were just vessels in the moment to lift up these truths that we were speaking.
Well, that really sets the table for our discussion, and so now we'll take calls. We're going to take a break. There's the number, 615-737-PLUS, 615-737-7587. We'll take a break. Be back right after this.